What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, we have some very, very interesting news. As undefeated WBC, IBF, Unified Welterweight World Champion, Superstar Boxer, Errol Spence Jr., he reports and says that his biggest rival, undefeated 3-division world champion, Superstar Boxer, who's the former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO reigning welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence Bud Crawford. Terence Crawford is 38 wins, no losses, no draws, 29 wins by way of knockout, 34 years of age, 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. He's coming off of the biggest win of his career after he defeated a neutral opponent of Errol Spence and himself in two-time welterweight world champion, Superstar Boxer, Showtime Shawn Porter. With that said, Terence Crawford is widely considered by many to be #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Some people would say Terence Crawford is at number 2. Depends how you so choose to, look at it, okay? It's all opinionated. Errol Spence is viewed as top 3 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world himself, at 27 wins, no losses, no draws, 21 wins by way of knockout, 31 years of age, 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach, okay? So they're both viewed to be top 3, at worst, top 5 pound-for-pound best fighters in the world. And I'm hard-pressed to see you find 4 guys better than Errol Spence or 4 guys better than Terence Crawford, okay? So with that said, a lot of people will put 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Saul Canelo Alvarez, who's the undisputed super middleweight champion, at 1, 2, or even 3. However you so choose to look at it, right? With that said, they make up 50% of the biggest fight in the sport of boxing amongst themselves. When they combine, will be the 100% the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. So Errol Spence represents 50%, Terence Crawford represents 50%. Okay, now there's a lot of going back and forth. There's a lot of tug of war. There's a lot of, finger pointing as to why the biggest fight in boxing hasn't happened yet. Well, Errol Spence, he laid the groundwork for his plan and fighting Terence Crawford. Now, Terence Crawford, obviously being a 3-division world champion, means that he started in lower weight classes. Terence Crawford started at 130, became a champion 135, 140, and 47. Errol Spence, he started his career, actually, I believe he fought at 154 at one point in time, and he campaigns at 147. That's his division. Errol Spence set out to be undisputed at the welterweight division before Terence Crawford made his debut in the welterweight division, and they became their biggest rivals, and this became the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. At the time, Errol Spence, he was looking to face off against Kell Brook, who was the IBF welterweight world champion. He wanted to fight against Keith one-time Thurman, who was the unified welterweight world champion, and he wanted to face off against Manny Pacquiao, who was the WBA or WBO champion. Okay, he was the WBO champion. So you had Keith Thurman with the WBC and the IBF. WBC and the WBA. You had Kell Brook with the IBF, and you had Manny Pacquiao with the WBO title. So Errol Spence's plan was he became the mandatory for Kell Brook in the IBF. He went to the UK. He beat Kell Brook and took the IBF title from Kell Brook in the UK. Errol Spence, he came back. He wanted to face off against Keith one-time Thurman. Keith Thurman was playing ring around Errol Spence, and he wasn't willing to make the fight happen. Manny Pacquiao was picking and choosing who he wanted to fight. And so Errol Spence was seeking out both guys. But he was aggressively seeking out Keith Thurman, and Keith Thurman was aggressively avoiding Errol Spence. Keith Thurman stated that he believed that Errol Spence represented his Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather moment. Okay, so he believed that he wanted to fight against Errol Spence in the future. He wanted to let it marinate. He wanted to let it grow because he felt like that was his super fight. And Keith Thurman misjudged it, as he stated. Keith Thurman pushed off the Errol Spence fight. Okay, and Keith Thurman, he stated that, Errol Spence would get his opportunity. Manny Pacquiao was picking and choosing. Manny Pacquiao, he then faced off against Australian star boxer Jeff Horn in Australia. Was seen to be, a stay busy fight. A fight that Manny Pacquiao was just going to showcase his talents in Australia, in a different country. And the apple cart was upset. Or Jeff Horn got the nod. It raged a lot of, it caused a lot of, kickback. And you had guys like Teddy Atlas, Hall of Fame, well-renowned trainer, turned colorful analyst, boxing pundit. He was calling the fight. He went on an absolute rant. He was disgusted with the decision. Manny Pacquiao lost his title. Then Terence Crawford, he came up because the World Boxing Organization, the way they operate, they'll give you and make you the mandatory challenger as soon as you move up in weight. Here's where it gets interesting. As Errol Spence, he stated that the WBC was going to order Terence Crawford to be his mandatory. Okay? They were going to order Terence Crawford to fight for the vacant WBC title. And he stated that Terence Crawford turned the opportunity down. Okay? So the WBC was going to order, World Boxing Council. Errol Spence stated that they were going to order the fight, and Terence Crawford turned down the opportunity. Terence Crawford's trainer, manager, Brian Bomac McIntyre, he attested to this. He stated that it was easier for us to go the route of going and fighting Jeff Horn for the WBO title, as opposed to facing Errol Spence for the WBC title. I believe because Jeff Horn is a top-ranked ESPN fighter. So we know Timothy Bradley, two-division world champion, turned colorful boxing analyst and boxing pundit for ESPN and Top Rank. He stated that Top Rank and PBC weren't doing business. That's the reason why he never fought Errol Spence, who became his mandatory. And so Keith Thurman said Timothy Bradley stated that it was nearly impossible for them to do business. So Bomac was stating that, it was an easy route to go the Jeff Horn route because it was a backyard fight. And so they fought. So Errol Spence, he stated that Terence Crawford had the opportunity to face off against me, for the vacant WBC title. That was vacated by Keith Thurman due to inactivity. Okay? Keith Thurman had beat two-division world champion Puerto Rican superstar boxer, who was the unified junior welterweight champion, and he was the WBC welterweight champion in Danny Swift Garcia for the unification belt back in March of 2017. Keith Thurman went on a 2-year hiatus. The WBC stripped him of the belt. And Errol Spence is stating that at that point in time, they could have fought for the vacant belt. And Terence Crawford turned down the opportunity, which saw Danny Garcia and Sean Porter face off for the vacant WBC title. Then Errol Spence, he beat Sean Porter in unification bout for the WBC title. So Errol Spence is saying that there came a point in time where Terence Crawford and Errol Spence could have been ordered, but he didn't want to go that route of being ordered. Now, I don't know how that would have been possible, seeing as though Danny Garcia and Sean Porter was immediately elevated to the WBC to fight for the WBC title. Okay. So with that said, who knows how these things work with these sanction bodies, okay, the presidents, because they have vested interest in, let's ultimately say their pockets. So who knows what they would have or would not have ordered, okay? We just saw the World Boxing Association, better known as WBA, President Gilberto Mendoza, completely dropped the ball, and then they're acting like they picked it up. They stating that, with Yordenis Ugas and Manny Pacquiao and Stanionis situation is just, it's a cluster of confusion. And so Errol Spence is saying that I had a plan to pick up all these belts, and I know I'm going to fight Terence Crawford because I told the world I'm going to be undisputed. For sure, I'm going to be undisputed. And to become undisputed, I know I'm going to have to go through Terence Crawford. So it's going to happen. So Yordenis Ugas is obviously in the way. And so Errol Spence said, how could I fight? He says, how could I avoid Terence Crawford and fight Terence Crawford undisputed without the other belt? So he states, it's not possible for me to be ducking or avoiding Terence Crawford. I'm simply just collecting these belts. And he's going to be somebody I'm going to collect the belt from. Okay? Now, we know Errol Spence is on record saying 60-40 his favor. And then Errol Spence, he even stated, 70-30. Terence Crawford's going to have to take what we give him because I'm just simply a bigger draw than Terence Crawford is. Okay? He stated that the numbers don't lie. The proof is in the pudding. And you look at the numbers, the pay-per-view numbers, that is, I'm a bigger star. And so Errol Spence, he lets it be known that Terence Crawford had the opportunity to fight me and be my mandatory. And they were going to order the fight, and he turned down the opportunity. So Errol Spence is letting it be known, I'm fighting Yordenis Ugas for a unification bout. I'm fighting for another world title. I wasn't avoiding Terence Crawford when I fought Sean Porter in a unification bout, and I'm not avoiding Terence Crawford to fight Yordenis Ugas. I'm collecting the belts, and the fight is going to happen between myself and Terence Bud Crawford. So Errol Spence is stating that Terence Crawford turned down the opportunity when ordered to face him. Okay. Now Terence Crawford, we know he stated that 60-40 is not going to work for him. 50-50 will work for him. Now the fact that Errol Spence is clearly doing bigger pay-per-view numbers than Terence Crawford, is this going to be a sticking point? Or is Errol Spence, and on top of it, Errol Spence is going to have a third belt. He beats Yordenis Ugas in March. He beats Yordenis Ugas in March. He's going to have a third belt. Okay, so for Terence Crawford to have a third, for Errol Spence to have a third belt, and then for Errol Spence to be doing bigger pay-per-view numbers. Now, we know Terence Crawford, he just did a fight with Sean Porter, a neutral opponent, in which Terence Crawford is on record stating that he's done bigger numbers than Sean Porter. The reason that Errol Spence and Sean Porter done big numbers is because of Sean Porter. Okay, that's what he stated. He stated that it's because of Sean Porter's star status that Errol Spence and Sean Porter did 325,000 pay-per-view buys. Well, now Terence Crawford fights Sean Porter, and Terence Crawford only does 150 to 190,000 pay-per-view buys, which means that Errol Spence accounted for a major difference when it came to Sean Porter and Errol Spence, and Sean Porter and Terence Crawford. Okay, now Terence Crawford, he cited the reason for that is because of the fact that Terence Crawford fought on the app against Sean Porter, ESPN Plus, where Sean Porter fought Errol Spence on regular pay-per-view format. But the ironic part is that when you look at it, Terence Crawford has done bigger numbers on the ESPN Plus app as a pay-per-view fight than he did on a regular pay-per-view format against Amir Khan when he reportedly did 150,000, and against Victor Postal, which reportedly did 60,000 pay-per-views, and that was on a regular pay-per-view format. So now that it's being said that Errol Spence is going on to his fourth pay-per-view showdown. He did 350,000 with Mikey Garcia. He did 325,000 with Sean Porter. He did 315,000 with Danny Garcia, and now he's going into his fourth pay-per-view event. Okay, that'll see him do well over combined million pay-per-views. Okay, he does 200,000 pay-per-views with Yordenis Ugas, and that's going to put him over 1 million pay-per-views, where you combine Terence Crawford's pay-per-views and they barely combine for 400,000 or just over 400,000. And now that Errol Spence will have 3 belts now, will speak volumes. But Errol Spence, he stated that it's important for him to become undisputed. So is Errol Spence willing to take, a 55-45 split you know, opposed to a 20% split with 60-40? Is he willing to take a 10%, 55-45, for the fight with Terence Crawford, because he says his number one objective is to become undisputed? So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share the videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
You're watching Blue Blood Sports TV. Wow.